Now, in the last video that dropped, I compared the Chairman's Reserve Legacy to the Chairman's Original. But now we're going up a slight level because I'm now comparing it to the Forgotten Casks. The Legacy is the rum that I come back to time and time again for all my tiki cocktails and that kind of thing. As I've said in the previous video, you know, it is a one healthy glug of rum and enjoy it as a neat sipper. It's not a session rum to me, but I do adore it for that. It's a lovely rum. But I haven't, in all honesty, sort of revisited the Forgotten Casks in quite a few months. So now, should I actually be using this in tiki cocktails and enjoying this neat? Should I have them both? You know, is this a restock? Let's find out. Now, you can find out about that rum in the previous video, but I know I've talked about the Forgotten Casks on this channel at least twice from what I can remember, and I'm just going to echo what I said in both of those. You know, people, it's one of those things. It's not me bragging, it's not a humble brag, but it's one of those things that I've always had the ability to do because of the industry I'm in, because all the marketing that comes out, you know, I can read between the lines. When this came out, so many people, including plenty of rum connoisseurs, like rum, you know, real deep diving in rum, were under the impression that this was a limited edition, you know, one-off, one of a kind. And it was never that. What the whole story was, is that they had a great fire. I've forgotten the dates. You don't need, the dates are irrelevant. You can go and search them. But basically, they had a great big fire at the distillery. There was barrels like just put everywhere out the way, and they basically forgot about the casks. When they found them again, the rums that had been in them, because all the barrels were obviously labelled so you know what's in them, the rum was just too old for the blends that they've got. You know, the Legacy, the Original, and the next one up, the 1931. It was just, you know, the rums they had just didn't match any of the blends they had. So what they decided to do was come up with a new rum, the Forgotten Casks. Now, as I say, so many people fell foul of the whole, oh, it's a limited edition, and now they're magically, you know, being able to recreate it. No, all the rum was aged longer. If you know how old the rum was, you can just age rum for that length of time and recreate it. It's not rocket science, but that went over people's heads. So what we have effectively got is a great story, a great marketing story, but actually a true marketing story. And we've got this rum. Now, the difference between the two, as I said, you know, cane juice and molasses, 5 and 6 year old rums in this. This is obviously, I think this is essentially too old for that. I think that's essentially what it is. Okay, so we've essentially got molasses-based rums in here, and we've got 8 to 11 year old rums in there. Okay, so basically, is that potentially as a single, you know, so 8 to 11 year old rums, we don't know, they don't say that this is like, say, a 3 to a 5 year old rum or whatever. It's just an average age of 5. So, but you know, we've got the components in there that make up a little bit of that. They've just been aged too long. So for an 8 to 11, so for 5 to 6 year olds and 8 to 11 or 9, what is it, 8 to 11, we've got a healthy step up. Now, the one thing we have to do is obviously look at the price. So let's get straight onto that. Covered from the last video, 39, let's just round up for ease, okay? £40. It is just slightly under, but £40 in the UK for a Master of Malt. $50.50, so $49. 45.87 euros. Okay, so 39.49 essentially, so 39.50. So that's the price point. Now, we're not actually jumping up that far for this. Okay, so from £39.50, say, 43.74. So where are we? £4.20, which relates to 55, rounded up, $56 and 51 euros. So again, the price difference for £4.20 roughly. Where are we? Five and a bit dollars, and best part of €5. That is actually not that much of a price jump for the age of rums in there. Now, if you want my tasting notes for the Legacy, you can go back and watch the previous video. I'm not going to repeat that, but let's just dive into the Forgotten Casks on the old nostrils. Now, this is interesting because obviously it must be that cane juice vibe that comes off from the Legacy, because I don't get any of that funk, any of that banana. I do get tropical fruit, but it's a soft, Again, it comes back to us being a soft aroma, soft nose. And just to clarify one thing, I've just had to check it myself again because I've forgotten it is a 40% ABV. So it's the same ABV as the original, so not as strong as the Legacy. And again, it's just a default thing that you'd get with any sort of decently aged rums. You know, you get the vanilla, you get the caramel. It's almost not worth mentioning them because if you don't smell them off an aged rum, there's something wrong, unless the cask is like been a very wet sherry cask or a very wet wine cask or something like that. But from a standard sort of ex-bourbon, like oak cask, you're always really going to get vanilla and caramel or some sort of maybe like toffee kind of vibe. But the more that opens out, there's a couple of things going on here. I actually get a different tropical fruit on the aroma. I do get sort of banana, pineapple, not banana, sorry, pineapple, coconut off there. But I tell you what I actually get. I get more of a, like a roasted kind of vibe, like more of a chocolate coffee, like, what's the word, a mocha. I've always got espresso choc in my head. It stems back to a bar that I used to work at in like the late 90s. And there was espresso choc instead of mocha. I always call it espresso choc for some reason. But yeah, coffee and chocolate. And I don't think I'm really getting much else off there. I think I've summed that up. It's just soft. It's not overpowering. It's an inviting smell. As I said, to come back to that previous video, actually the Chairman's Reserve original is the inviting smell, and the Legacy is like, maybe not. But actually on the taste, it's the Legacy that's like, wow, that's delicious. And the original, it's like, oh no, I'm not a huge fan of that. So let's have a little taste of this. The smell makes me want to sort of dive in. It's been a few months since I've probably had a glug of this. Let's see what it's like. Wow, that is delicious. There is so much going on that palate. So much going on that palate. Now, where do we start? Right, let's get those out of the way. Vanilla, a bit of wood. Actually, as nuts as this sounds, that wood kind of level is on par with the original. There is that wood, that extra wood. Even though it's a lower ABV, there's that wood vibe that goes over the top of my tongue, which I don't really get off that. But you'd expect it because it is a longer aged rum. I wouldn't expect it off that, but I would expect it off that. So that's there. But even though I'm not the massive fan of those big wood vibes, those big barrel aging vibes, there's so much else going on there. There's the tropical fruit, there's the dried fruit, there's chocolate. There is a little bit of chocolate that's sort of coming out to play as well. And I've just done two things there. Firstly, I had a little sip, just straight, and I kind of got the that sort of Christmas cake vibes, but nothing remotely close to what that is. So gets the dates, the sultanas, the raisins, that kind of vibe, and that's coming off there. But mixing saliva with it on a second, there is so much tropical fruit that just bursts out of that in a different way to those. Again, it's like real juicy pineapple, like real ripe juicy pineapple off there. There is, I haven't really used this word in any of these, but there is a little bit of spice on there. But I'm not relating that spice, and this might be just me. I'm not relating that spice to any kind of like a spice as you would kind of like cinnamon, nutmeg, all that sort of stuff, ginger. I'm actually relating that spice to barrel aging, that peppery wood burn. That's what I relate that spice to. But that is delicious, really, really delicious. And I've got a couple of things going through my mind now about summing this up. But one thing I just want to quickly say before I do sum this up is, you know, 3 rums there from the same distiller, not too much difference. All right, that's got a bit of cane juice in it, so that brings a totally different vibe. But 3 completely and utterly different tasting, different vibes going on. So good for a distillery. You know, Chairman's Reserve is massively underrated, and I've been fortunate enough now to try. I forget what the Chairmans were. Any like social media followers I've got here will have seen it was a special release that I tried down in Black Parrot in London a few weeks back now. That was gorgeous. I've tried a couple of the 1931s again at Black Parrot. Fantastic rums. I do actually now, in this part of my journey, prefer Chairman's Reserve to, I was hiding behind here now, to the Admiral Rodney's. And I used to love the Admiral Rodneys. It's still great rums, but my palate really does sit on the Chairman's Reserve these days. So let's do the summing up very quickly. You know, these questions, I've got to stop calling them power questions, although it is funny, isn't it? It's kind of funny, like power questions. So, is it value for money? Have I got anything behind the bar already that I can kind of compare to it? And would I restock it if it ran out? Now, so let's get rid of the original. We're safely, you know, that's not even in the equation because we kind of dealt with that in the previous video. Can I compare these two side by side? No. Again, I can't. And even from the taste profile, unless you kind of do, like, you've gone down the route of tiki cocktails and kind of done this, and you've got to remember that is predominantly what I am. I've been a bartender 28 years or so. Yeah, I like making fun disco cocktails, but I know how to balance cocktails. Cocktails is my kind of bag. Neat tasting is something that I'm kind of learning as we go along. But so there's one thing you kind of pick up and appreciate with this. That's a fantastic rum, but actually depth of character and bringing cocktails to life, that nails it. So would I buy that as my category? Probably, actually, this is more category 4. Like slightly longer aged blended rums, but it's sort of in there as well because, you know, in Smuggler's Cove, it does, when you get up to that, it kind of does talk about 12-year-old rums and 10-year-old rums. You know, this is 8 to 11-year-old rums in there. So it's not quite there. It's a little bit older than category 3, but it's, you know, but the point I'm trying to make is that is just not going to bring the oomph and the character and the body that you want for some tiki cocktails that brings. However, when it comes to neat sipping, I adore that. I absolutely adore that. I love it to bits. But that for me becomes the really nice session rum. And I can have, perhaps it's the ABV, but I would quite happily see myself having 2-3 glasses of that a night. And I come back, that's definitely a one healthy glug, but me done sort of thing. So in that sense, I don't think I can actually compare them. I think both of those have a home on my bar, my back bar. Very different use case purposes. I wouldn't mix, you could mix it, of course you can, but I wouldn't mix that. That for me is the neat sipper. That for me is the cocktail rum. Actually, to be fair, that makes a lovely rum and coke and a rum and ginger. But actually, if you're just all about rum and cokes, I know that makes a fantastic rum and coke as well. But we're talking about sort of tiki vibes. We're talking about neat sippings. They're completely different, but I couldn't have one and not the other. That's how I've got to leave this video. Cheers.